Wonderful Wednesday, captive audience. And we are at the last Wednesday of September, Don.
Wow, amazing. How did that happen, right? I mean, it's
Time
actually
is marching on. It's
we had a
racing on, is what it feels like.
we had a good old fashioned northwest rainstorm. A couple hours ago, one of those 15-minute downpours, and it's fall when you actually like it. In the spring, you're like had it, you're tired of it. Right now, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, well, and I woke up to rain this morning, but the sky has cleared. It's been
Mhm,
actually a beautiful day with
mhm,
the cloud formations that have been in the sky.
mhm.
It's actually quite pretty around here. Hey, everybody! Glad that we're getting so few people logging on here, coming on. I'm surprised you're here because we are competing with the presidential debate
Well,
and
don't tell
Trump.
them that they'll leave.
I don't know. I don't know. And then we have Trump, of course, is
Mhm,
talking tonight over in Michigan. But
mhm.
and I guess only 7 people made the debate schedule tonight.
Yeah, I
Apparently,
saw that. Who dropped? Do you know?
I don't know, and I don't know who. Well, let's see. Who they have is Ron
They got
DeSantis,
okay.
Nikki Haley,
Mhm.
Vivek Ramaswamy, Mike Pence, Tim Scott, Chris Christie, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
See, I would have thought for sure Chris Christie would have been the one that dropped. Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
it's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
And I really haven't paid attention to, what they need, what they had to, their qualifying was,
Mhm.
probably more donations, more donors, not just
Mhm.
a dollar figure and that type of thing. So I don't know, but it says in this article, excuse me, on Just the News, that many of the candidates they think are going to turn their sights on Ramaswamy
Mhm.
because his polling had surged. We'll see. What was interesting after the first debate, shortly after, was Roundup,
Mhm.
and we had our straw poll out there, right?
Mhm.
Again, and some people went, I like Tim Scott.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then we had anyway. So of course Trump still won the whole thing,
Right. Right.
but more people had heard of Vivek Ramaswamy than they did at the fair. At the
Mhm.
fair, people went, "Who's that?"
Right.
There was 14 people, and they're going, "Who? I don't even know who these people are."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess that's the purpose of this. I'm just not a fan of the debate format. Is like horrendous to me. I mean, basically, all they do is figure out who the front runner is, and everybody piles on, and no one ever really learns anything about their views on policy. But if it's political entertainment for some, we'll let them have it, I guess.
Yes, well, this is it. I personally, despite what is this awful injustice that is happening to Trump, I still think he's the front runner, and these people are vying for second place.
Agreed. It's not even interesting when these. I mean, I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers are. But like the last time this happened, nobody was really watching. I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people were watching this debate, and they all went to the other channel to watch Trump, which is probably what's going to happen again.
Well, that's what I suspect, and kudos to Trump for having a dual, dual not being at the debate because, frankly, he, in my opinion, he doesn't need that. He's
No,
already
it's
there.
brilliant, right? All they're going to do is just, the questions will be biased. The whole thing will be an anti, and you won't learn anything. Much better for him to go in a format where he can answer questions the American people are really interested in, which is really the best format anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So we have, Trump has really. It's just awful what is happening to him. This legal assault that is happening, and the two-tier justice system. And I don't know if you heard yesterday, but the judge in New York is just I from everything that I read, he's really going after Trump. and some of it doesn't make sense going, oh, Mar-a-Lago's only worth $18 million. So you're going to lose your business license in the state of New York
Yeah.
or the city of New York.
Mhm.
And like, are you kidding me? In fact, one I was watching while I was having dinner earlier, I was watching Newsmax, and they said, so here the judge says that during this period of time that Mar-a-Lago is only worth $18 million,
Mhm.
where it's closer to maybe 750 million or more,
Mhm.
could be even higher, being it's like 17-acre property or something. Well, anyway, the commentator brought on a looked up Zillow,
Mhm.
just right now, some properties, what are they worth? And there was one that was a residence on an eighth of an acre,
Mhm.
and it was worth something like $45 million.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and see, the whole thing
And it
is,
wasn't oceanfront.
as far as I understand it, there's nothing, uh, there's no law that's been broken here. You can say your house is whatever value you can say your house or whatever property is worth whatever. It's incumbent on what the other person's going to pay at the end of the day. There's no crime here. What this is basically about is disenfranchising the American people. I mean, it's really it should be an affront to all of us. It's an attack on the American citizen. It's an attack on the Constitution, more than it's an attack on Trump, because they get rid of Trump, they'll just do that to the same thing to the next guy who comes along who's like Trump. That's the nature of the evil people that we're dealing with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is no crime here. When you are dealing with real estate and you want to buy a property and take a note on a property, you're going to get a loan for it, and you have other real estate holdings, you're listing those of what their value is and what your income is. And whoever's giving you the loan has got educated people and lawyers that know what they're doing, right, in finance. And they'll be scrutinizing all of this data.
Yeah, and you can pay whatever. Hey, there's no law against you overpaying or underpaying.
That's a fact. That's a fact. There isn't. And no harm has been done to anybody in this.
Hmm. Yeah.
None. He's made all the payments, hasn't missed anything. There's no harm in this. And it's really a no there. And this is a civil case that I think would handily be won on appeal, because this is all politics.
See, the whole thing
And
is, yeah, the more they can keep us talking about that, right? And that's why they keep this charge after charge. They've been doing it for the last, what, 7 or 8 years.
yeah,
You're never talking about all the positive things that he's accomplished. You're spending all your time on this stuff, which is their objective. At the same time, by the same token, you look at all the negative stuff on the other side that it really is damaging the country, and it minimizes the time talked about that. So it's just political strategy put together by operatives, evil Marxist operatives. And it's too bad it takes getting punched in the nose like we have the last few years to understand that. But I think more and more people do.
well, I think you're right. So, talking about some bad news, and this is bad news for Biden. Um, there's a story that I ran across today, is a Biden bombshell. It's from Just the News, and I just posted it there. That I wasn't aware of this until running across this. Biden's brother told told the FBI the family tried to help Chinese firm buy U.S. energy assets. And so this is James Biden. He told the FBI in an interview last year about efforts by him and Hunter to help the CEFC energy firm in China buy a liquid natural gas facility on Monkey Island off the coast of Louisiana. And that he personally met with the people from China and whatnot. And yet that is our energy source.
Come on, Sonny, that's biodiversity.
I BS on that one. Sorry, but BS on that one. You know, this is treasonous, selling our assets that we need to be they're developed, right? And this is, you don't sell our energy. This is what, Trump had us energy independent.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, this just makes me sick. And I think the more that we learn, it's going to make me sicker, you know?
Sure.
It's
It's
they
clearly
because
part of the
there are
strategy.
we do unfortunately have people in our country that have no qualms about, in my opinion, committing treason against our nation for their own financial gain
And
at
they're
any
mostly
cost.
and they're mostly in the government. I mean, look, so the first thing was shutting down the pipeline, right? Then it's taking lands out of production, so you can't search for oil. Then there's loading them up with regulations, so it becomes too costly to get it. And then it's like favoring environmentally correct things like windmills that produce nothing. So it's all of this stuff just piles on, which is the reason why you're paying $5 a gallon for gas, and they'd love to see it at 10. Um, that's what we have, and a media that's complicit in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's some things, it's interesting for me anyway. Some things I'm not shocked by, right? I just go, wow. But I do believe it's worse than what we know.
Hmm.
And as these layers get peeled away, we're finding out it's worse than what we know or what we thought.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
that's the reality. And
well, the good news
so
is it's no longer cloak and dagger. I mean, if you don't see it now, you don't want to see it. Um, and I think the majority of people do see it, and those that don't, there's nothing you're going to do for them. They're blind.
but at the same time, okay, so I'm going to be the little bit of the devil's advocate here,
Hmm.
is in that at the same time we have people in our country that are watching other sources of news that don't talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah. No, you raise a
Right.
good point. Sure.
And so there is just a certain amount of people that aren't getting anything.
Mhm.
And is that, and then I know a few people that won't watch any news. They don't care.
Right. Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know. Ignorance is bliss.
Well, they care when it comes to their doorstep, and it will come to your doorstep. I don't know if you remember that case a few weeks ago. It was a liberal, I want to say California legislator who got pulled out of her car and beaten like to a pulp. And she was voting for these anti-police policies. And as soon as she got able to speak, she was talking about we need to enforce the law. Yeah, it amazes me they can't see the correlation between the two before they get personally beaten, but a certain amount of that will happen. Uh,
Well, I think they're thinking they're untouchable. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. Well, yes, it can all happen. And with all of the illegals crossing over the border, our
mhm.
crime rates are just astronomically
Yeah.
rising.
Oh yeah, well, I think this is a great segue into the situation with Target closing three stores in Portland and two in
Yes.
Seattle. It's 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 absolutely, and what's stunning about that is not so much that they closed because they've been bleeding money for years. What's stunning is that they actually came forward and said why. If you look at what Walmart did in Chicago when they closed those stores, they were very sketchy around saying why. They wouldn't say the reason why. As much as I despise Target, I'll give them credit for actually coming out and saying it is because of the massive theft that's happening in Portland. I mean, you can't make a dollar in those places. I think the only reason they stayed as long as they did was because the leases were, they couldn't they
Right.
ran the numbers of the leases. It didn't make sense. I think, and the reason why I think the one at Pike Street Market, that thing is still open only probably because the lease is so, the numbers don't make sense. But these other stores, I'm sure they're leaving a lot of money on the table. But like any business person, you look, well, I'm going to take a loss here, which is the lesser of the two evils. And it reached a point where it was better to bail. And that property in downtown Portland, if you know downtown Portland, that is a nice, right next to the Pearl District. And they couldn't make it work because of the theft, and because of the lack of law enforcement. I
Right.
saw a couple of Walgreens stores in San Francisco. Think about this. They put alarms on things like shaving, kits because those are razor blades really expensive, right?
Right.
In Walgreens San Francisco, they're locking up toothpaste. How bad does that have to be?
Right. And so I saw on the ticker tape, watching the news when I was having
Mhm.
dinner, that 2/3 of the losses in 2022 that stores businesses reported, 2/3 of the losses was over theft.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. You
So,
look at it used to be kind of an industry standard in retail, 3% shrinkage, they call it, right? So
aha,
3% walked out of the door. If you could run your store and it's under 3%, you're doing pretty good. If it's over 3%, you're the manager of that store, you're probably in danger of getting fired, right? You had people in these Target stores, like in Seattle, like 30%, right?
yeah, and then you have these wild smash and grabs,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Whoa, they're just
Right.
going in and destroying stores.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at that and like, how can you stay in business? And
Yeah,
then, and these are the big Fortune 500 corporations. They can afford to you know, pay outrageous lease and be underwater for years before they make a decision and pull the plug. And I got 500 other stores. I'll just close these three. What about the mom and pop? You know, the person
right.
who put their life savings on the line and open whatever, you know, retail type facility they did. They are just like, you know, done. Or the guy who bought a franchise, you know, he's running the store, keeping kids employed at an IHOP or something, and then the government like destroys their business. Um, and it is the government, right? The direct person that did it is the criminal, but the people who let the criminal out of jail to do this stuff, and it's the same guys over and over again. That's the government. The
Right,
government,
it's the city council.
right?
It's, in many layers. It's the city council of Portland that
Mhm,
said, "Yes, let's defund the police.
mhm,
Let's remake the entire political structure
mhm.
of Portland and how crime we'll send counselors out there."
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that is like the most. You have to be only the most naive liberal. Oh, you have to have multiple degrees to think of something that stupid. It's so stupid. Only a PhD would think of it, right? I mean, literally. And I noticed that years ago. I mean, I was in my 20s and began to realize the stupidest things come to people with the most degrees. Um, I think once you get to a master's degree or beyond, IQ starts going down. It's like think about that curve, right? You get increasing returns on investment until it begins you top over, go over the hill. Well, after a master's, once you hit master's degree, it becomes stupid. They just don't
Right?
spend time in the real world because who else could think something like that would work? Um,
Well, but wait a minute, Don. It's all by design. Don't
that's true.
forget
That is,
that they
that is
want the
true.
chaos. It's by
Yeah.
design. And so, and Lori says we have accepted this conduct as a society. You know what? I have not accepted this conduct at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah.
This is I say no. And so then it wasn't just the yes, it's the criminal, and then you have the city council, and then you have the district attorney who's not
Mhm.
doing anything, and the attorney general of the state
Yeah.
who's not.
And that's the killer because
It is.
if the attorney general is not enforcing the law, it doesn't matter how good a job the police do, even if you don't have very many of them, which they've also done. It's going to go back to loose on the street, and the vast majority of these crimes, it's the same people over and over again doing the same things. I mean, we know this. Um, the vast majority of the population is law abiding. I mean, how else could you have an average shrinkage rate of 3%? Think about how many people go in a store. There's no way you can enforce that because the
Right.
vast majority of people don't go in a store and steal. You know,
Yeah.
but if you let the bottom 2% in terms of morality, like out of prison, it goes to show you how much damage a small percentage of the population can do. Because this whole thing runs on
And it is a small percentage. You're
it's just
absolutely right. It is a very small
it,
percentage
uh,
that's that is causing this destruction or being destructive
yeah.
in our society.
Well, yeah, you think about how the only way a free society can work is that people adhere to a moral code, a general code of conduct. Because if you're free, I assume you're going to drive on the right side of the road. I assume you're going to stop at the stop sign. I assume you're going to stop when the yellow bus stops and the little flags come out, right? None of that stuff has to be done. The policemen can't be in every corner. I mean, the ratio in the average city of a police officers to citizen, something like 1 to 19,000. So the chances of you doing a crime and the police is right there looking at you is pretty minuscule. So the
Yeah.
reality is this only works because most of us adhere to the moral code most of the time. Um, if most of us stop doing that, this will result in anarchy. And the only way to control anarchy is tyranny, which is what the people who run all this stuff want to happen. Um,
Yeah. Yes, yes, and we're watching that in America more and more today.
Mhm.
More and
Oh
more
yeah,
we
I heard, and this is not an original thought. In fact, hardly any of my thoughts are original, but I heard one today. It was like a talk radio. I think it was Gorka. I don't know if you ever listen to hear at Gorka.
mm.
Sebastian Gorka.
Oh, yeah, I like him.
Guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just driving to the store, and it was one of the most interesting things I've heard yet. So let me throw this out. I'd never heard this before. So he had a lady on, and she was brilliant. I didn't catch where she was from, but she had done this research, and she had looked at Marxism and looked at documents that were written 40, 50, 60 years ago. And in these documents, she found this was the strategy was you start with CRT. And with CRT, the principal objective of that is to make white people hate themselves, particularly young white people. Then once they hate themselves and you get that going, then you introduce something like LGBTQ because then they don't have to be themselves anymore, right? And that's a way of escaping the
Mhm,
self-hatred. And
mhm.
is that not brilliant? I mean, these people wrote this stuff. It's an evil brilliance, right? But they
Right.
wrote this stuff, put this strategy into play. We're talking clear back in the 50s and 60s.
This
And
is the manual, and they're following the manual.
what they are. And that is absolutely what has happened. I mean, I run across these kids who are like mutilating themselves and wanting to change their gender. And it's primarily young girls, by the way, that are suffering the most from this. I mean, everybody's suffering, but the young girls are just getting annihilated with this.
I
Uh,
wonder why. I wonder why it is young girls over boys.
I don't know. I think it must be the hormonal things that happen at 12, 13, 14. They're most vulnerable to this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the
And
primary.
girls mature faster than boys.
Right, they mature faster than boys,
Mhm.
and if you can get them to basically mutilate themselves early in life, how do you and you can't undo it?
Mm-mm.
It's like there's
No.
wow with capital letters is all you can say.
Right.
To be
Right.
evil enough to do such a thing, but that seems to be occurring. That seems to fit with what we see.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I'm thankful to read some other countries like the UK
Hmm.
has gone away from this. They've
Hmm.
said, you know what, we're not doing it anymore. They're banning hormonal therapy for children,
Hmm.
and they're banning all of this because they've been down this road before we have,
Hmm.
and they're seeing the consequences, and they're coming to their senses that as a society, this is not good at all.
Yeah, there's no level you can justify
No.
doing that. There isn't. I mean, just basic, take the morality out of it. Just basic, we don't have the studies. I mean, you don't chop up minors
No.
when
No.
you don't have data, right? It just,
No, this is the grand experiment, right?
yeah, on somebody else's kids, by the way, that
Yeah,
and
but it's
many,
our society. It is
oh,
somebody else's, but it could be yours. It's
oh,
kind of like
absolutely,
unless it,
sure,
yeah.
without the parents knowing. Um,
Yeah.
but
It's unconscionable to me. It's unfathomable that they want to hide that, from parents. And
yeah,
that's
but
the
that too,
schools.
yeah, the destruction of the family. That's part of the strategy. I mean, the basic uh, vehicle for delivering civilization is the family. Um, and if the family structure is not in place to turn that baby that's a savage, into a responsible citizen,
Mhm.
in 15 years, you got 20 years, you got savages running around as grown people. I mean, it's one thing to see a kid throw a tantrum in the store when they're 3 years old. Yeah, that's cute, that's funny. But how about when they're 22?
Right.
And you got a 6 foot 3 inch, 220-pound man like acting like a 3-year-old. That's pretty ugly. And we see that in the streets. Look at
We do.
Philadelphia last night.
Yeah.
That's a direct result of the destruction of the family.
Yes. Yes, it is. Hey, what else do you have on your list?
Oh my goodness! Wow, we spent a lot of bullets in a short period of time. Uh, so I saw one of the things I saw was kind of interesting. Was like, and I didn't go in detail in this particular article, but there were 12 people arrested on the east side of Portland for human trafficking. I mean, like probably a daily occurrence in Portland, but it's just that this is happening, and if people are getting caught, how many are not getting caught, right?
Right.
um, which
Right.
which goes back to the broken border thing as well. Um, it's just nuts that this is happening.
It does. And it does go back to the broken border. But in this human trafficking, before I saw the movie Freedom,
Hmm.
I had heard, oh, I-5 is the corridor,
Hmm.
and it's like rampant up here,
Hmm.
um, human trafficking.
Hmm.
And so I went, well, that's over there.
Hmm.
It's not at my door yet. Well,
Right.
it
Yeah.
is happening around over here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a serious, serious crime. It really, really is. Nobody should be bought and sold
Hmm.
into and be subjected
Hmm.
to sexual slavery or any kind of that
Hmm.
matter. These
Oh,
children, and it is young boys and young girls.
yeah. And I had heard that same thing. I had heard that for years. I'd heard that clear back in the late 80s and 90s when they would call Portland Boys Town. Now, if you're not in those circles, you don't have any clue why they would say that, right? But it's become very evident why they would say it now because it's finally gotten big enough to be at our doorstep. Um, I mean,
And
there's
it's so rampant,
right.
and then you have the whole, Epstein case that brought
Mhm.
more light to it and more, pushing pedophilia, quite frankly. So you go, okay, that's where that's going as well.
And the thing is, these people they prey on certain scenarios, right? I mean, they're no dummies. So if you have an intact family where parents are paying attention, you're not likely to feel the direct, unless you're in a specific neighborhood, you're not likely to feel the direct impact of that. But if you're a kid whose parents are disengaged or the relationships are all messed up and you're just kind of on your own, those are the ones they pick off. I mean, the first target is runaways, for example, right?
Sure, sure, I can see that part. But did you see the movie Freedom?
I did. Hmm.
So remember at the very end, they showed video
Hmm.
of child abductions
Hmm.
right from the grandparents or right out of the parents,
Yeah.
where they weren't just kids all by themselves
Hmm.
somewhere. They were with an adult, some of these,
Hmm.
and just abducted from their father or their mother or grandparents.
And see, what I suspect is that that type of abduction is much more common in other countries, but we will be headed in that direction. I don't think we generally are there here on our soil,
Ah,
but I think we're going to be headed in that direction as the family continues to get destroyed and poverty and all that other stuff, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right?
sure, sure.
I mean, I had a close relative tell me of a time, and this was like 20 years ago, where she was walking to, Corona, California,
Yes.
suburb of LA. She's
Mhm.
walking through a car. It's dark at night, and she notices because she's aware there's a van with no windows parked next to her car. And so as she's walking towards her car, she notices a person following her. So she was bright and situationally aware enough to yell out to another couple that was sitting outside of another car, just, "Hey, Johnny, Sally, I haven't seen you before. What's going on?" And she walks, and they're just completely like, "Who are you?"
Right, right.
But that was just enough, and that person ran and got in the van, drove off. Right. Um,
Thank goodness she was situationally aware.
right. Yeah. Now a lot of people have been taught that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or to be aware of your surroundings. But increasingly, I mean, I've had that very conversation with my daughter. Um,
Yeah.
I had a personal uh, encounter, similar sort of a thing in downtown Portland about 10 years ago, where we're sitting outside of one of the concert halls downtown Portland, again, waiting for my daughter to come out. I didn't want her to go to that concert, but I figured, okay, you go, I'll sit outside, right? Well, I
Right.
was sitting outside in the car, and three guys who were completely stoned out came, and one of them opened the back seat of our car and got in the back seat. I think they were completely stoned or whatever, right? And I got
Right.
out and did the manly thing and grabbed him by his shirt and threw him out in the street. But they were both so high they weren't capable of really doing anything. And um, it wasn't a wise thing for me to be parked there, sitting there, not really, paying attention to these guys. My point is, you used to not have to worry about that in downtown Portland.
No, you're right. No, you're right. And more we have to worry about it all, quite frankly.
Oh,
It
yeah.
all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just don't go down there now. You just don't.
No.
Uh, but that was
No. So Bobby says, how many children are abducted by a known person?
Mhm.
for human trafficking? I haven't any idea.
Well, I tell you, Bobby, and that brings up an interesting case because that goes back to the breakdown of the human fam of the traditional family as well. Because think of this, I remember reading an article about this about 20 years ago, and now I look back on it. Yeah, that guy was accurate. So if you don't have a dad, and let's say you're a girl in the family, and dad has abandoned the family or whatever, and mom's got serial guys coming through who aren't his biological father, what do you think is likely to happen? And it does with regularity, right? So not only are those women abused, but they're much more likely to get put into the situation where just and being trafficked because there's no man in the house to look out for their best interests.
Right, right. You're absolutely right there. Absolutely right. So, what else have you got, Don?
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. Gosh, let's see what else we got here. I got a little piece of paper here. I wrote down a few things. Let's see. That one, Philadelphia. We talked about the Philadelphia. Oh, mRNA. This might be an old one. Some of you may be aware of this, but mRNA has been detected in human breast milk now. So you get the shot, and this thing circulates in the body. It doesn't leave the body like they promised. And so now, if you're breastfeeding, you like to transmit uh, that immune system damage to your child. I mean, again, the sickness of these
Wow.
people is beyond imagination. These are the reasons why you don't do untested. This is the reason why they don't do clinical trials, for one thing, women of childbearing age or women who are pregnant, because we don't know what it's going to do. It's always considered to be unethical. And now
Right.
suddenly we're just doing this. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And, today I was, well, you read Coffee and COVID, and we have with Jeff
Mhm.
Childers. So you just had a fellow who he was a prime minister of Australia step down
Mhm.
because of and I don't know if he was the prime minister, but he was over a district, I believe,
Mhm.
that was the longest shut down area in the country and the
Mhm.
harshest. And so many, and what I find interesting is there are many of the people that were implementing these very strict policies in different nations or different states
Mhm.
are stepping down. They're losing their jobs.
Yeah.
And because of the science that's coming up and
Mhm.
the truth that is coming out, about all of this. And it's a shocker, quite frankly. I mean, it's a shocker. It's hard to fathom that people are that people want to perpetrate this
Mhm.
on other people.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And here's the thought to that is not new to human beings. I mean, not 80 years ago, we had Hitler, Stalin, and Chairman Mao at the same time
Right.
doing the same things. It's more sophisticated. I mean, they're not going to take you out and shoot you in the back of the head like they used to. Because
That
that
didn't affect you generationally.
right, yeah, that yes, and that was a little bit too obvious. So now this is much more slick and sophisticated. We will let you kill yourself and not even know you did it to yourself. How about that? That's pretty slick. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I don't know. I think you froze up there, Don.
I
I don't
did.
know if
I wish I froze looking differently.
well, we can't control that, but we can still hear
That's
you.
not very flattering.
Oh goodness. Goodness.
Glad I
Well,
brushed my teeth this morning.
so some places are implementing, mask thing, and some are trying to go that route. And I think we as a society just have to absolutely refuse and say, you
Mhm.
know what, I'm not doing that, and get hard about it.
Yeah,
Um, truly,
yeah.
truly,
Well,
truly.
I 100% agree. I mean, you look at what the governor of New Mexico tried to pull a few weeks
Oh
ago,
yeah,
and I think the mindset's gotta be the same. It's like people just walked around with their guns out. That was
yeah,
great.
yeah.
You know what? That's fine. What are you gonna do about it? Right. You're going to arrest 300,000 people. You're not going to do it. You can't do it.
Right. No, you can't. And but I've got something else I wanted to bring up tonight. You know, we've got all with the border crossers. I think it's up to, they're saying there's like 12 million now here that have come across. And I love the fact that they're shipping them to other states that said, we're going to be the sanctuary state and sanctuary cities. Although, you know, our previous governor has said, you know, Oregon's going to be that. No, I don't want them all coming here. But, you know, they've been shipping them over to New York. And the New York mayor is, oh yes, you know, you've probably seen it on the news, and he says, oh yeah, we welcome all of the illegals. Come on up. Well, since he's been getting them shipped up there, they're saying, oh no, Biden, this is a disaster, you know. So
that has been one of the most brilliant strategies ever, by the way.
Yes.
Let them get the result of their policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And more need to feel that burden. Remember when they did that to Martha's Vineyard, wasn't it? They flew them into Martha's Vineyard, and Martha's Vineyard like flew them out the same day, going, sorry, everything's closed up here. We just don't have the space.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the sad part is a 95-year-old Korean War veteran was booted from his nursing home to make room for illegal immigrants pouring across the border. And he claims that the nursing home in Island Shores, where he used to live, gave him 6 weeks to pack his bags and vacate his room.
Well, that shows you the depths, the depravity of the left.
Yeah, the Democrats are evil. They don't care.
Right. Yeah.
They don't care at all. And you know, so I just want to, you know, talk about that. That is so awful. I see your and then but you know, we do have a little bit of good news. And the good news is the Secretary of South Carolina Library. I'm going to post this. This is from the Daily Caller, which I have tonight was the first time I've actually looked up their news. I think I'm going to go look for some other things elsewhere. And I like it because it didn't have a video with it. So that's not eating up my bandwidth and whatnot. But the headline is South Carolina State Library cuts ties with librarian group that hired Marxist coordinator and cites tone-deaf partisanship. So I think this is wonderful. They've officially terminated their partnership with the American Library Association.
That is music to my ears.
Yes, and this was in a letter shared September 26th. So just yesterday, citing the group's alleged partisanship. And the ALA selected Emily Drabansky, who described herself as a Marxist lesbian, in a since deleted tweet to head the group in 2022. And Drabansky said she hoped to use her position at the library to examine the consequences of decades of unchecked climate change, class war, white supremacy, and imperialism that have led us here.
See, this is another one of these outfits. You know, the fundamental premise that Abraham Lincoln set forth about whatever people can do for themselves, they should do for themselves. There really is no place for a public library. I mean, you can do it yourself. You got internet, you got all kinds of access. Like, just why are we paying for libraries? Because anything that's public can be taken over by some clowns like this and then abused. And this is another perfect example of it.
Well, I have to tell you, I have a feeling that the gal who used to be the director of a library very near here was quite radical. And she lost her job and was moved to another community, got hired by a library in another community, and she has lasted less than a year. And in the library that or 2 years, I should say, 2 years, and she's lost that job.
Yeah.
And what I noticed in the library here locally was she was removing all the conservative books
Mhm.
and removing and making our really transforming the library and go, where's this? And she even got rid of books that were donated by citizens or citizens groups.
Sure.
And it didn't matter what she didn't want any donated books.
These people live
And
that ideology.
yes,
That's their entire life.
yeah. So, I'm thankful that she doesn't work here any longer, and that has been reversed in our local library. And when I read in the paper a few months back that that particular gal lost her job,
Mhm.
and she came from somewhere in the East, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying all the East is liberal, but she did come from somewhere else and
It was
came
probably a
out
big
here.
it
And
was probably a big city and a big old nasty university. That's where they all come from.
yeah.
I mean, we have that East Coast, West Coast, South. It's the big cities in general are going to produce this stuff. Um,
Yeah. So I think that's great that South Carolina State Library has said, we're just not doing this.
mhm.
And apparently Montana State Library
Mhm.
voted in July to leave the ALA as well.
Yeah. See, these things, it's like these local victories are really, all the news and attention goes to the big Washington, D.C. style stuff.
Yes.
Right? But at the end of the day, this is a belly to belly, school board to school board. It's like boots on the ground fight. That's where it's going to be won. When you hear things like South Carolina, I understand North Carolina did the school choice, right? That happened there. You look at New
Yes.
Mexico, that governor, they basically are looking to impeach her and how the sheriffs down there just ignored. We're not enforcing that, right? It's going to be that stuff that wins the day at the end of the day. So there's lots of reasons to be positive, by the way, lots of reasons. Um,
Yes, there is, because things are turning around slowly and slowly. The wheels turn slowly.
mhm.
And Lori, no, I didn't see Trump. I saw Trump in a gun store, but he did not purchase the gun. So he
What do you
has a picture holding the gun and says, "Thank you very much. That's nice," but he did not purchase the gun. So
That is funny. Well, I can't wait to see what he has to say. I watched his last show that he did at the same time as the last debate. I tried to watch the debate. I just couldn't stomach it. I'll try it again, I guess.
well, I didn't watch the debate, and I did watch Trump. So there we are.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because you're right. What they're going to do is just gonna attack Vivek. If he's the front runner, he's going to catch all the arrows. Um,
he is.
that's pretty much what it'll be. I'd love it if they would just present your positions, and what you're going to do to change things. That's what we would want to hear. But
Yes.
uh, so, anyways, we will see. We're in for an interesting ride. Maybe as interesting a ride as we've had the last few years. This next year, think about where we're going to be in 12 months. Wow, you know, it's a big wow because they're
Hold
going to
on. Hold
hold
on. I think the ride's going to get wild.
It's going to be the mother of all October surprises. Well,
Yeah.
they don't even know who they're going to run on the other side, by the way. I mean, all this focus on Trump. Who's going to be the candidate on the other side?
Well, they might know who, or they might be still trying to figure it out. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
We don't know. I don't know.
Well, my money's on the California kid, but you know, that's not a positive thing, by the way. But that's where I'm putting my money. We'll see. We'll see.
Yep. I like that. Saddle up, buckaroos. No kidding. That's good, Lori.
Well,
Yeah.
look at our forefathers dealt with probably far worse than us, and I think we have to, whenever things feel like we're in a state of despair. I mean, you think back to what previous generations put up with. It's pretty unbelievable, and I'm talking about people all over the world, not just here. I mean, I
Yes.
remember teaching my kids about the bombing of Dresden and Hamburg, for example. By the way, I mean, can you imagine? your town is being bombed and you have no place to run and hide. I mean, it's just crazy. The firebombing of Tokyo, right? The rape of Nanking. I mean, these things are like, these were 500 years ago. I mean, this is like barely a lifetime ago.
Right.
And we've
That's
been
right.
subjected to none of that stuff. So as bad as this is, and yeah, we need to be vigilant to reverse these people, to stop them in their tracks, so we don't wind up with those kinds of situations. Um, we aren't. People say, "Oh, it's like as bad as it." No, it could be a lot worse, right?
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
it's our job to stop it from being a lot worse. We owe that to the people that came before us.
Yes. Yes, I'll tell you, because we live in the greatest country. We
But
truly do. We have so many freedoms, and we have so many spoiled people in our country.
even when it's like beaten up and half crippled, it's still it's still phenomenal, right?
Yes. Yeah.
When you stop and objectively look at it, right? If you're not in one of these central city drug-addled places, which the vast majority of the population isn't, it's a great place, better than any place in the world. Um, now we
You know,
got
it is. And Don, you have many times on our program said, look around. The news is showing you one side, but look around what really is happening in your own community.
yeah, you don't see that stuff.
No, no, truly you don't. I'm seeing an uptick. We're
Mhm,
having an uptick in crime.
mhm,
We're having, not very too far in Walla Walla, they're having a bunch of arsonists,
mhm,
and we think, I think anyway, it's one woman
mhm. Yeah.
that's that's doing that over there. I think she might be in jail right now. I'm not sure. And yes, there's problems, and we're getting more problems, but
Mhm.
it's not certainly nothing like Chicago, thank God.
Well, yeah. Well, you think about the citizens again who adhere to a moral code, they're
Yes.
not having these problems. It's the ones who don't adhere to a moral code who are having these problems. And the people who do that are always going to have those problems, but the intellectual elite have exacerbated it by removing the consequences for actions that make you worse. And that's where I think the escalation is. I mean, if I'm someone who, let's say, for example, I'm someone who's thinking about doing crime. Well, if I know there's no consequences for it, that pushes me over into actually doing the crime. Or if I'm somebody who's doing crime and there's not going to be any consequences, well, I just do more crime or bigger crime. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's it's simple incentives. I mean,
Yes, it is.
yeah, I mean, human beings respond to incentives. That's why we have them. And if you don't enforce the law, you're going to have more lawbreakers.
Definitely, definitely. I like and having law and order and having laws are okay as long as they're not, it's not over the top. It's not so oppressive. Thank you, Lori.
Mhm,
And thank you for your audience being here
mhm.
very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all as well, because we know y'all could have bailed on us,
Yes,
but you
definitely. So
didn't.
spread the word. Life is good.
Mhm.
And come back to Captive Audience, and we'll help share some other news with you that you might not have heard before.
Stay positive, let freedom ring, and keep that frozen face because it's great. I got like a full bars. I don't know why it's doing that.
I don't know either. All right. Good night.
Good night, everybody.